There was a moment you learned that being present didn't mean being seen. You spoke, and no one listened. You reached out, and no one reached back. You tried, and something in you quietly broke. So you adapted. You became quieter, colder, more distant. Not because you didn't care, but because caring felt dangerous. And now, something strange has happened. The very thing that once came from pain, your ability to ignore people, has become your greatest source of power. People chase you. They notice your absence. They feel your silence louder than words. And here lies the paradox. The behavior that protected you from being hurt is the same behavior that now gives you control over others. But at what cost? Because deep down, this isn't just strategy, it's survival. You're not ignoring people because you're strong. You're ignoring people because, at some point, you learned that being ignored was unbearable. So you became the one who does the ignoring, not to dominate, but to never feel that helpless again.
What you're experiencing isn't random. It's a deeply wired psychological adaptation rooted in avoidant attachment. Avoidant attachment forms when emotional needs, especially in childhood, are consistently unmet. When a child learns that expressing vulnerability leads to rejection, dismissal, or emotional absence, the brain makes a critical decision. If connection hurts, then I will stop needing it. This creates a nervous system that equates distance with safety. You don't just ignore people. Your brain has been trained to regulate itself through emotional withdrawal. Another key concept here is emotional suppression. Instead of processing feelings, your system compresses them, like a sealed container under pressure. You appear calm, detached, even powerful. But internally, there's a constant tension, a quiet effort to keep everything contained. And then there's intermittent reinforcement, a principle often discussed in behavioral psychology. When attention is inconsistent, given, then withdrawn, it creates addiction-like patterns in others. So when you ignore people, you unknowingly trigger this cycle. Your silence becomes magnetic. Your absence becomes desirable. Your distance becomes power. But understand this clearly. This power is not dominance. It's predictable psychological conditioning. And you learned it, not by choice, but by necessity.
There is a quiet grief that lives inside people like you. Not loud, not dramatic, but persistent. It's the grief of never feeling fully met. Carl Jung once said, "Loneliness does not come from having no people around you, but from being unable to communicate the things that seem important to you." And that's where the real pain lies. Because ignoring people doesn't just protect you from them, it protects you from yourself, from your need, from your longing, from the part of you that still hopes someone will stay. So you silence it, again and again. You convince yourself, I don't need anyone. I'm better off alone. I have control. But beneath that control is fear. The fear of being seen and then abandoned. The fear of giving and not receiving. The fear that if you let someone in, they'll confirm what you've always suspected, that your vulnerability is too much. So you choose distance. Not because you don't feel deeply, but because you feel too deeply. And ignoring people becomes your shield. But shields also block love.
This pattern doesn't stay in the past. It follows you into adulthood, quietly shaping how you relate, love, and exist. You might notice this in ways that feel confusing. You might pull away when someone gets too close, even if you like them. Lose interest once attention is consistent, but crave it when it's gone.
take hours or days to respond, not out of arrogance, but to feel in control. Struggle to express emotions, even when they're overwhelming inside. Feel powerful in silence, but empty in connection. Choose independence over intimacy, even when you're lonely. Test people by withdrawing to see if they'll chase you. Feel uncomfortable being truly known, so you keep interactions surface level. These are not personality traits, they are coping strategies. And the most dangerous part? They work. They give you control. They make people pursue you. They protect you from rejection. But they also keep you in a loop where you are always safe, but never fully fulfilled. This is where self-awareness becomes crucial, because healing doesn't begin with changing behavior. It begins with witnessing it, not judging it, not shaming it, but understanding. This is what I learned to survive, and asking, is this still serving me, or just protecting an old wound?
Real power is not in ignoring people. Real power is in choosing connection without losing yourself. But that requires something deeper than strategy. It requires healing. One of the most effective approaches here is inner child reparenting, because the part of you that withdraws is not your adult self. It's a younger version of you who learned that closeness leads to pain. So instead of forcing yourself to open up, you begin by listening inward. You ask, what am I afraid will happen if I stay? And you answer that fear with compassion. Another path is shadow work, a concept Jung emphasized. It involves facing the parts of yourself you've rejected, your neediness, your longing, your desire for closeness, not as weaknesses, but as human truths. Because the goal is not to eliminate your distance, it's to make it a choice, not a reflex. To reach a point where you can say, I can be alone without feeling abandoned. I can be close without feeling threatened. That is real power. Not control over others, but freedom within yourself. There's a quiet shift that happens when you begin to heal. You stop ignoring people to feel safe, and start choosing people who make you feel safe enough to stay. And maybe the deepest truth is this: you were never too much. You were just surrounded by people who couldn't meet you. So you adapted, you survived, you learned silence. But now you have a choice: to keep surviving or to finally start living. And if this resonated with you, if you saw yourself somewhere in these words, then understand this: you are not broken, you are protective. And healing isn't about losing your power, it's about redefining it. Because the strongest people in the world are not the ones who ignore. They are the ones who can feel everything and still choose to stay open. That is your next evolution. And it begins the moment you stop running from yourself.